Hi, everybody.
Good morning.
Thanks for joining us today. I have with me today the Minister of Sports, Culture and Heritage, Cathy Cox, and I thank you for being here, and I thank our folks who are on the line as well. I understand that we're going to keep the alternating process going, so you'll have the people in the room have the first question here in a few minutes, and then we'll go to the folks on the line and then conclude. Not far from where we're sitting right now is the Forks. It's the confluence of two major prairie rivers, and it's been a meeting place for thousands of years. And it's a perfect example of what Manitoba has been and continues to be a place to come together. And as Manitobans, we know that well. And as we move into the next stages of our economic recovery, we're moving into a Manitoba Restart program. And our Restart plan is positioning Manitoba as the leading jurisdiction in North America in managing and recovering from this pandemic. It is a comprehensive plan, our Restart plan, and it's going to include a new event attraction strategy designed to showcase what Manitoba's been good at for a long time, hosting the world. We are a destination that's ready, we are a destination that is safe, and we're ready to host major events as well. Ready, safe, and then grow. Minister Eichler will have more to say in terms of detail on some aspects of this plan in the not-too-distant future, but I am pleased today to announce that the Government of Manitoba is committing an initial investment of $8 million to our Restart Manitoba event attraction strategies. Je suis heureux d'annoncer que le gouvernement de Manitoba s'engage à investir 8 millions de dollars dans notre stratégie d'attraction d'événements relance MB. Manitoba has proven to be a world-class host of major events like the World Junior Hockey Tournament, the Canada Summer Games, the Junos, the Brier and Scotties Curling Championships. And we've done it before, and as we move forward with a safe restart of our economy, we're getting ready to do it again. And that's why I'm also pleased to announce that as part of our Restart Manitoba event attraction strategy, our government is committing to an investment of $2.5 million should Winnipeg be selected as a hub city to host this year's Canadian Football League season. Manitoba is leading in recovery with a safe plan to restart our economy, which is why we're ready to make this commitment and invite the CFL to play the 2020 season here in our beautiful province. Le Manitoba est en tête de la reprise avec une plan pour relancer notre économie. C'est pourquoi nous sommes prêts à prendre cet engagement et à inviter la LCF à jouer la saison 2020 ici, dans notre belle province. We already know, though others claim they have, we have the best fans in the province. The best fans have last year's Grey Cup champions to root for this year. And the opportunity to host the CFL season isn't something that we want to punt to Saskatchewan or have intercepted by Hamilton. We want to get ready for the CFL season to touch down right here in Manitoba. As it has always been, the health and safety of Manitobans remains paramount. I want to emphasize that should Winnipeg be chosen as a CFL hub city, the teams, support staff, all associated in coming to Manitoba as part of this event will be required to follow all of the public health protocols we have in place, in addition to any extra precautions required by the Canadian Football League. On an ongoing basis, our bid committee has been consulting with and will continue to consult with the outstanding and dedicated public health officials that are leading our COVID fight here. And all of us here share the belief that Winnipeg and Manitoba are ready and safe to serve as a CFL hub city. Even though we know there may not be fans in the stands for these games, the economic benefit to our province will be profound, and it will be especially profound for our hard-hit tourism and hospitality sectors, two of the hardest-hit sectors in our economy and nationwide as well. We will be welcoming CFL teams, along with staff, league officials, and media to our capital city for an extended period, and they will be staying in our hotels, creating jobs, dining from our restaurants, creating jobs, and contracting local businesses for transportation and other needs, creating jobs. The direct return on our $2.5 million investment will be almost double that's just the return to our coffers in the province, but the real return will be in the economic impact of over 45 million estimated dollars in total business sales, and that's a positive impact on over 600 jobs in our province. We'll also showcase our province during every CFL broadcast and make clear to viewers what we already know. There's no better place to be than right here in Manitoba. We're ready, we're safe, and we're growing, and together we're going to grow our way to recovery. Cathy, I invite you to add some words, if you would.
Well, thank you, Premier, and good morning, everyone. I am absolutely thrilled to be here today for this very exciting announcement. Manitobans have worked hard to flatten the curve. They've been diligent in ensuring that they follow the social distancing protocols, and we are the envy of the country. We're safe and we're ready to grow here in Manitoba, and that's why there's no better place to serve as the CFL hub city. The opportunity for Manitoba to host this major event will be beneficial to the entire provincial economy, but in particular our hospitality and restaurant industry, which has been hit especially hard. Our license plate reads Friendly Manitoba for a reason, and that's because we are the most welcoming province across the country. And now we're looking forward to the opportunity to showcase who would call Winnipeg home for about 15 weeks. It would bring tens of thousands of hotel room stays here to Winnipeg. And wouldn't it be amazing to see our beautiful province as the backdrop for 60 CFL games? Our government is also excited to accelerate a $10 million Restart Manitoba event attraction strategy. This strategy will maximize the potential of Winnipeg and rural destinations all across Manitoba to host large-scale meetings, conventions, and events. We look forward to continuing to work with key stakeholders and partners as we develop this plan to bring other major events to our beautiful province. Once again, it's great to be here this morning, and I'm going to turn it over to the Premier for questions.
Thanks very much, Cathy, and we'll go to questions from anyone who's interested.
Last time we spoke to the CFL, last time we checked with the league, they hadn't yet decided whether there will be a season. They were obviously hoping to have one. And then if there is a season, where those games would be played. Have you been given any indications that they are about to make a decision, that they are favoring Winnipeg, or that they are looking on Winnipeg favorably?
I think, to be fair, we know there's still negotiations going on within the CFL between the players and the organizers of the league and the management. So nonetheless, they're looking to plan ahead, and so are we, and we're looking to see if we can attract this opportunity to the province of Manitoba, because we've worked hard here to become a place that's deserving of that opportunity. We are safe for people who choose to come here. We're safe for Manitobans, and we want to be the recipients of some good quality CFL entertainment as well. If we can get the hub city designation, that's going to help us grow our recovery, restart our economy, and help us give Canadian football fans a bit of their lives back. And I think that's an incalculable benefit for the Canadian people.
Will there be extra precautions taken similar to what other sports have done, whether it's the NHL or the NBA, where with their bubbles? Is that something that would be in place here in Winnipeg with the CFL?
Yeah, every precaution is going to be taken. The isolation rules and so on have to be followed. The federal government has allowed returning players in major leagues to isolate at home prior to coming here, but there's an additional isolation that the CFL has agreed to impose on their players having come here. And regular contact and input from our health officials is going to be critical going forward to make sure that we're ensuring the safety of not only Manitobans, but obviously also those who visit our province and come here to play or join our Bomber hometown players as well.
So, as Josh asked there, with those additional protocols that you just mentioned, would that actually be a bubble?
I don't know what you're asking, Barley.
Okay. The bubble that is in Edmonton, there's a certain area and designated places where only the players and the staff, they can only go to certain places. They can't mill about in the community. They can't go to other places that are not designated part of the bubble. Will there be restrictions on the movements of the visiting players, staff, and other officials?
Dr. Roos will be available to you in a couple hours. You can ask him any questions related to the specifics around the bubble aspect, but if the CFL decides to impose additional restrictions, that'd be their call. I understand that's happened in a couple of the other major sports leagues as well. But our advice will come from Dr. Roos, so I'll let you ask him when he's here in a couple hours.
What consultation has gone on with the industry that would be hosting the CFL here in Winnipeg if that were to happen?
We have regular weekly calls now. It used to be twice a week, but with our industry groups all across the province, when I say industry groups, I mean chambers of commerce, the hospitality industry, restaurant, food services, hotel, and manufacturing and exporters, and so on and so forth. It's over 50 groups. And there's, I can't tell you there specifically is encouragement for this specific thing because we're just announcing it now. We didn't pre-consult with those groups on this issue specifically, but I can tell you that generally they're very supportive of getting the economy back going again in a safe way, in a measured way. Nobody has more, frankly, at stake than do the small business people of our province in us continuing to make progress against COVID. And so they're very concerned about progress being made, but also safety being maintained throughout that progress so we can sustain it on an ongoing basis.
So before agreeing in broad terms to have the CFL play here, were you not briefed on some of the options like the bubble, some of the other options that would come into play before agreeing in principle to have such a large sports event happening here?
Yeah, that was pretty well, Tom.
So you know what a bubble is?
I have a pretty good idea what a bubble is,
So
Tom.
you're not sure, like you don't know if it would be a bubble or if it would be something else, because there's a pretty big difference between the two, between containing athletes in a controlled environment and letting people go home or go anywhere they want.
That's right.
I think you'd be concerned about that. Were you briefed on the options?
Well, Tom, I see you have an article written, so I'll just say that go ahead and write it. The fact of the matter is that we're in negotiation now to try to secure hub city status for the province of Manitoba to host the CFL, and that negotiation is underway.
There is a concern, especially as we're seeing a slight uptick in COVID numbers. Some people out there are concerned about having people, a lot of CFL players are from the southern U.S. and the numbers there are very bad. What do you say to people who are concerned about having people come here from hot spots such as Texas and Florida and places like that?
Well, we've addressed this question before here. I think, I reminded of Franklin Roosevelt's comments in light of the Great Depression. He said, the greatest fear we have is fear itself. And remember that the protocols apply to everyone as individuals. And just because you come from somewhere where there may be other cases doesn't mean you yourself have COVID. The idea is to get tested. The idea is to do the isolation. The idea is to follow the health directives. And I think that's what we want to make sure happens here, so we ensure the safety of all participants, clearly, but also of all Manitobans in the process.
On a similar note, beyond this, we've seen a big uptake in cases in Western provinces since we got rid of the quarantine requirement. What do you personally think about the idea of reinstituting quarantine for, say, Albertans, Saskatchewanians?
Well, I think you got to be careful that you don't draw oversimplistic links between outbreaks that are actually fairly localized and make a general assumption, therefore, that travel restrictions being loosened cause that, when that is, I think, not really supported by the data fully. I would say, though, that we are going to be giving Manitobans a much more detailed idea of what the positive test percentages would have to get to so that we would have to move backward. I think that's important to understand. I mean, we're not about trying to frighten Manitobans. I think, or Canadians generally, we're about making sure we have precautions in place and that measures are understood and why they might be triggered. So over the next few days, we're going to be sharing with Manitobans what would have to happen in terms of the number on the positive test outcomes before we would have to back up, as you're asking me about the travel restrictions specifically. I'd say more generally there are other things like group sizes and other determinants that may have to be reconsidered should there be COVID come back to some degree. I'd also emphasize, though, it's important not to get hung up on the case number. People get so hung up on the case number when really it's the percentage positive test outcome that's a more significant indicator of where people are at, where jurisdictions are at in terms of their progress or regress when it comes to dealing with COVID. And so we're stepping up our testing. Our test numbers have gone up to a certain degree. That's going to make it more likely there'll be more case numbers. But the percentage of positive test outcomes is what we really need to look at as a key indicator, according to Dr. Roussen's counsel to me and others.
And Bob, you were the minister. Elaborate on what the other $5.5 million is going to do at MFL.
Well, the $5.5 million that this event is going to generate, is going to have.
Sorry, there's $8 million in the strategy, 2.5 on the CFL Hub City. What's the other 5.5 million for?
Oh, we've got some other.
Yeah.
We've got some other events in the mill right now, and we're looking for more. We set up a system. Under this minister's leadership, we set up a system to evaluate better the bids rather than sort of in the past. A lot of this was done on a more of an ad hoc basis and less analysis. So we've endeavored to set up a system where we're taking a look at the real numbers as best we can, projected numbers. Our analysis shows us that there's a payback on this one that's pretty significant. But we've had some other very good events that have had a significant benefit, not just in terms of the dollars to taxpayers, the return on dollars back in the provincial coffers, but in terms of some things that are harder to measure. Hosting the Canada Games, for example, yes, generated, it was, some would argue, the most successful Canada Games ever. But it generated a lot of enthusiasm among our young athletes and their families, and certainly the fans that had a chance to be here and see it. And Manitoba did a tremendous job of hosting that event as one example. The Briar, another fine example, in Brandon, folks in Brandon just gathered together, and it wasn't for volunteers, that event, and many events in our province wouldn't take off the way they have. This one's a little different, but the fact remains there is an opportunity for taxpayer return. But like those other events I mentioned, there's also the benefit of people getting that life experience of sharing in a tremendous sports event or a tremendous cultural event, much of which we've been deprived of in the last number of months, for sure.
Mr. Premier, do you know how long? What's that?
We'll just jump to the phone. We'll come back. We'll come back here after.
Thank you, Mr. Premier. We will return to the room momentarily. Up first on the phone from TSN, Dave.
Premier, do you have any timeline of when you expect to learn whether Winnipeg will be successful in this bid to be the host city?
Dave, it's tough to accept, but sometimes these organizations have to determine their own time frames to get to the right conclusion. The right conclusion would be Winnipeg, and the right conclusion would be that the event would be safely held in Manitoba, but the CFL determined that through their own internal processes.
And just one follow-up, and I know there's going to be a lot more questions for Dr. Roussen this afternoon specific to this, but could you lay out the basics for us on how players would be housed in under this scenario in Winnipeg?
No, I won't lay that out for you, but if you have any technical questions in respect of any aspect of healthcare, we have a tendency here in Manitoba to let our health directives come from our health officials.
Totally respect. Thank you, Premier.
From City News, Jonas.
Good morning, Mr. Premier. In your discussions with Dr. Roussen, over the past, week, I know you touched on this, that we are seeing numbers rise. I guess the optics is the big thing I'm concerned about. Are you worried about blowback from the community for this right now? I mean, we're already hearing reports of, folks from outside of province having vehicles vandalized or things like that. Are you concerned at all about a blowback from the community to this?
Well, I'm always concerned when I hear about unfriendly or illegal activities being done by anybody, but I can say safely that Manitoba is the safest jurisdiction to have this event. And I can also say that Manitoba remains the friendliest province in the country of Canada. It's a pretty friendly country generally. So I'd say as far as concerns about the safety of people coming here and the respect that we'll show for them, I think that Manitoba has a pretty enviable reputation.
Oh, yeah, that's fine to me. Thank you.
From CTV Winnipeg, Jeff.
Well, hi, Mr. Premier. Have you been given an indication by the CFL that Winnipeg is a favorite, or maybe the favorite?
No. We think we have the best bid, though, and so I have too much respect for the CFL's management to think that they'd make the wrong decision, go somewhere else. I think this is the right spot for us to host the CFL. I think it's the safest place. And I know that Manitoba's hospitality industry and hotel industry is ready to do a bang-up job making sure people are safe and well cared for here.
And have you already submitted this bid, or is this a process?
We have a committee working hard to get ready and iron out all the details. We've got pretty good general back and forth going so far, and we're told, depending on the internal ramifications of the discussions with the players, that we have a few days to get nail down cross some T's and dot some I's.
Thank you, Mr. Premier. We now return to the floor.
Mr. Premier, have you been given any indication how long you would need to be able to serve as a host? You have $2.5 million laid out for food and accommodations, practice field rentals, all those other things. Do you know how long that $2.5 million is supposed to stretch to be a host city for the CFL?
That would be 15 weeks. Yeah, we expect to play 30 games here in Manitoba over a period of 15 weeks.
So you said 60 games earlier.
Oh, 60 games. Yes, I'm sorry. Yeah.
Would investors feel gain some revenues from this? In terms of, I mean, I'm not sure how it would work under these circumstances. There's TV revenue, there's nobody in the stand, but might there be some kind of rental? Any idea?
We're all in negotiation, Tom, right now. So as far as I don't want to speculate. There are a number of angles here that we hope Manitoba can derive some benefit from, but we're negotiating on a bid process that's a competitive bid process, and we're not the only jurisdiction interested.
How many hotel rooms off the top of your head does Winnipeg have in comparison to Regina?
I just think Manitoba's a better place to have it. And I know that we've got a hotel industry that's right now among the most hard-hit industries in our province. And I know they're ready to serve and they're ready to provide people with an opportunity to work. And I think it's a great opportunity for us to get some people their lives back, both working at the hotel, working in the hospitality industry more generally, and also, frankly, for a lot of Manitobans who love sports and are missing sports, and just the chance to see some good sports and see Winnipeg as the host. I think it's a real good opportunity. We've run the rough dollars and cents on the tax angles, but there's a kind of an immeasurable emotional aspect to this, I think, for a lot of Manitobans who've been feeling kind of deprived from their nightly ritual of checking out how the sports teams are doing and watching some sports or sports highlights on TV, that type of thing. So, you know, we're seeing it start back. We're seeing some recovery in other major sports gradually. Some things are coming back, not the same as they were. Golf, PGA golf would be an example. But just seeing that happen again, I think, is giving some people hope. Talked to some seniors on the weekend, and they're really they're very, very excited about seeing some more sports. They've been sports fans all their lives, but just to see some sports on TV and know that people are back out there able to play again, it's a big deal for a lot of people.
You have some money earmarked for practice fields. Any idea what some of those fields might be around the city, or?
We'll just leave that to the ongoing process that's unfolded. These aren't unfair questions, Tom. I didn't mean to be critical earlier, but I do think it's premature for me to start sharing details with you when they're not even ironed out yet.
So are you suggesting you know if there's a bubble in this plan, but you don't want to talk about it yet until there's a deal?
I think that the discussions around details will be undertaken in due course, most fully.
How closely are the Bombers in on this planning, or is this the province running this with just kind of a little bit of help from the Bombers? How close are they involved with these negotiations and the planning?
There's contact with the organization, obviously, but the gist of this is that it's coming from the community up, and that's the way Manitoba bids have been structured and successful in the past. That's how it's going to continue to be.
Roughly when would this happen?
That's up to a CFL response, not mine. Sooner the better. Sometimes takes a long time to get the right decision.
On the balance of the event attraction strategy, the other funding that's set aside, when can we see that money flowing into the community, or when can we see these events coming to Manitoba?
Well, that's a fair question, and you know, I'd say to the CFL, you better get to a yes fairly quickly for Manitoba, because we may have to start moving to recruit some hockey events fairly soon.
The other money, how will that flow to areas outside Winnipeg? Because the tendency is to have major events.
No, it's a fair question. We've had some really good events, obviously, outside of Winnipeg in the past, and we expect to have them in the future too. And there's a fair question. I mean, World Junior, right? We use other ice surfaces besides in Winnipeg. But I'm hesitant to get into detail here because I can't. Because the fact of the matter is, on this specific issue, we're in negotiation right now. The CFL has some irons in the fire and some other issues it has to. We're talking about a theoretical bid right now, I guess, to be frank, because we don't know for sure that the Players Union is going to agree to this. And on other events, we've got a few in the works. And they'll be subjected to detailed evaluation, and we'll make a decision in terms of which we can afford to back and to what degree. We've tried some in the past, as you well know. Some good efforts were put in, and we didn't win. But as my old man used to say, better to try and fail than to not try. So we're in there trying, and on this one, I think we have a good merit in terms of this being the place.
And what kind of events would we be looking at for areas outside Winnipeg? Because what often comes to mind are music festivals, and that with current COVID restrictions, they're sort of...
Well, that's the tricky part of the analysis right now, right? We're in a pandemic, and so a lot of the things that we used to use as spin-off advantages don't exist, for example. So the analysis is different now. Safety is the operative word. We want to make sure people are safe. They're able to participate to some degree for sure, but only as safety would allow. So safety will be the preoccupation for a while yet. As I've said repeatedly, we're not in a sprint here. It's a marathon, and this is one of the aspects of our lives that we need to get back. The events that we're trying to attract will be different in nature from what was the case in the past, pre-pandemic. And the opportunities for for example, direct participation events won't be the same as they were 2 years ago. And so it's a different dynamic. We can do the economic analysis. The social analysis is harder. But the reality is we can't stop living out of fear. We have to keep trying, and trying to get our lives back on track starts, to me, with helping people get their jobs back.
Is any of the money being set aside to improve or fix up the stadium?
Premature question. I won't get into the details on that, except to say that we expect the direct tax revenues to approximate, just from the province's standpoint, more than double what we're committing in the bid.
You mentioned
And you could ask the question, and you haven't, but you could ask the question, well, why aren't you making a more aggressive bid then? And I would say, well, it's not been our custom to do that. We've put money on the table to attract bids that we feel are merited here in Manitoba. We haven't thrown it at the wall. We're trying to get the things here that we think are right to be here. And we believe the CFL playing their games here is the right place for them to play them. We know from the numbers that we're safest and among the safest jurisdictions in the world. And we plan to continue with that. But what good is it to be safe and then to not have any events and not to do anything and not to try to get people back to work and so on and so forth? So we're trying to balance the need for economic and social recovery with the need to make sure that we're keeping our folks safe here. And those who come here, those who choose to come or have to come here through business or other measures.
But does some of this money go towards fixing up the stadium? You might need additional locker rooms, things like that, because of COVID restrictions and the stadium.
Oh, in terms of COVID preparedness, yeah.
COVID preparedness, and even just physically fixing up the stadium, because it's seen its share of problems and arguably
Really?
share.
Yeah, I'd heard about that.
Given its age, yeah, it's younger than me.
Given its age, yeah. Well, you can rush a quarterback, don't rush a stadium. Josh, you had a question. I cut you off.
Yeah, that's right. I was wondering if you know how many different CFL cities we're kind of pushing for to be hub cities. You mentioned Saskatchewan and Hamilton. Are there other jurisdictions that are pushing for this as well?
Well, it's the thing with this stuff. You're dealing with rumors, so I'm not going to repeat rumors.
What point did you make the decision to put in a bid? Last week. Last week?
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, guys.
So bubble or no bubble? I'm sorry. Bubble or no bubble? Tom asked the question. He deserves an answer.